The next thing to install is the power supply. The first thing to do is to connect all of the connectors that you will need to the power supply. These connectors are the SATA power connectors, the PCI Express connectors, and if you have a fully modular case, then you'll also need to connect the 24 pin and the 8 pin. If you have a non-modular power supply, then you will not have to connect anything as all the connectors are already pre-installed on the power supply. Next, you need to determine which way you should install your power supply. You can install the power supply in one of two configurations. Either the fan will face up or the fan will face down. To determine which way you should install your power supply, look at the case. If the bottom of your case has a grill and a dust filter for your power supply to intake air from, install the power supply with the fan face down. If it does not, you'll have to install the power supply with the fan face up. With both the connectors connected and the alignment determined, you should now install your power supply. To do this, insert your power supply from the side panel and then push it to the back of the case where it will be screwed down. You will use 4 screws to screw the power supply down. Simply look at where the screw points on the power supply are and screw it in at every single one of those screw points. Once everything is screwed in, your power supply has been fully installed and it is time to wire everything. With the power supply installed, it's now time to wire cables. The first cable I'm going to show you how to wire is the SATA power cable. The SATA power cable is incredibly similar to the SATA data cable where the cables are L-shaped. Align these L shapes to ensure that the cable will go onto the drive. Once you have them aligned, push the cable into the drive. It is hard to tell when the cable has been fully connected. Just ensure that the cable is secure. The next cable we're going to route is the PCI Express power. This cable will need to be routed to the middle of the motherboard where the video card will use it. It can either be routed behind the motherboard tray, or you can just put the cable directly up so that it can plug directly into the video card. If you have a power supply shroud, there should be a cutout where you can put the PCI Express power through. Next, it's time to route the 24 pin connector. The 24 pin power connector will need to route to the top right of the motherboard. Once you have routed it there, connect it to the 24 pin connector on the motherboard. You'll know the 24 pin has been connected when you hear the slight snap of the clip locking into place. Next, you'll need to route the 8 pin EPS connector or the 4 pin if you have an older connector. This connector will be routed to the top left of your motherboard, but it can also be in other spots depending on the motherboard. If you have a good case, there will be a cutout near the top of the case where you can route the 8 pin EPS to. Once it has been routed, connect it to the 8 pin EPS. This can be quite difficult due to the space constraints of the CPU cooler. It may also be difficult to connect if you have a 4+4 pin connector. Once you have connected everything, this is when I recommend you do cable management. This will not be an in-depth guide on cable management, but the main goal is to keep any slack away from the components so that you can maximize airflow. Once all the slack has been routed to behind the motherboard tray, you should try and get rid of as much clumps as you can in the back, that way it's easy to put on the side panel. You can do this by using the tie-down points along with some zip ties. Take the cables that have been routed, put them near the tie-down point, loop a zip tie through the tie-down point and around the cables, and then use that zip tie to tie them and tighten them to that tie-down point. From there, take some clippers to cut the excess of the zip tie, and I recommend rotating the zip tie around to hide the lock of the zip tie. With all of the connectors routed to the correct spot, it's time to do the last parts of the build.